The Slack channel went quiet right after HR posted the culture reminder. No names, no accusation. Just a paragraph about professional boundaries that everyone knew was about me. I was still at my desk when the notification slid down my screen. I didn't click it at first. I watched the typing dots appear and disappear in the channel, one by one, then nothing. My coffee cooled beside my keyboard. The mug had a chip on the rim. I turned it so the chip faced away. An hour earlier, I'd been in a small office with the door closed. No windows. A round table with 3 chairs. Mine was the one closest to the door. HR sat across from me with a yellow legal pad. My husband sat to her left. He didn't look at me while she explained the purpose of the meeting. "This is just to clear the air," she said, pen poised, "so we can move forward." My husband folded his hands on the table. He'd taken off his watch. He always did that when he wanted something to feel informal. "You need to apologize," he said. Not loud, not sharp, like he was asking me to pass the salt. I asked what for. He said I'd made things uncomfortable. He said perception mattered. He said the company couldn't afford distractions. Each sentence landed, then slid to the side, making room for the next one. HR looked at her pad. She didn't write anything yet. I said I was sorry if my presence had been misread. I said I hadn't intended to cross any boundaries. I kept my hands on my knees. I didn't say the girlfriend's name. No one else did either. HR nodded. She wrote while I spoke. When I finished, she tore a page from the pad and placed it face down on the table. "This is an acknowledgement," she said, "just a summary." I flipped it over. My words were there. Shorter. Straighter. Missing the parts where I'd paused. I signed. My husband stood before the ink dried. Back at my desk, after the Slack post, I finally opened the culture reminder. It was longer than the acknowledgement. Polished. It used the same phrases. Professional boundaries. Respectful workplace. Alignment. I scrolled to the bottom. HR's signature block. Today's date. A message came in from a project manager I worked with every week. "Hey, can we catch up later?" No time listed, no room. I replied, "Sure." One word. I watched the timestamp settle. At noon, I walked to the kitchen. The fridge hummed. Someone had labeled their leftovers with a blue marker. I poured water into a glass and stood by the counter, listening to the copier down the hall. When I went back, 2 meetings had disappeared from my calendar. No cancellation notes. Just white space where blocks used to be. I clicked one of them, just to be sure. The details panel said, "You don't have access to this event." My phone buzzed. My husband's name lit the screen. I didn't answer. He left a voicemail anyway. I listened with the volume low. "This is done," he said. "Let's not make it bigger." In the afternoon, HR scheduled an alignment check for later in the week. 15 minutes. Optional attendees listed as required. The room number was the same as the one from the morning. I added it to my calendar myself. The block appeared in gray. By 4, the Slack channel was still quiet. No reactions, no emojis, no follow-ups. People walked past my desk with their laptops tucked to their chests. One of them glanced at my screen, then away. I closed my laptop and stood. The hinge made a soft click. I slid the chair back in, straightened the stack of papers I hadn't touched all day, and picked up my mug. The chip caught my thumb. At the elevator, a manager joined me. He stared at the floor numbers as they lit up. When the doors opened, he waited for me to step out first. I did. He didn't say anything. Outside, the air was cooler. I checked my phone. No new messages. My calendar still showed gaps. That night, at home, I opened my laptop again. The culture reminder was still pinned. I read it once more, slowly. Then I closed the lid and set it on the table, face down. On Tuesday, the office sounded the same, but people moved like they were carrying something fragile. Doors clicked softer, chairs scraped less. When I walked in, my badge worked, and that almost felt like a favor. I set my laptop down and opened my calendar first. The missing blocks were still missing. In their place were blank stretches that looked clean from a distance, like time off I hadn't asked for. I clicked one of the white spaces and tried to add the meeting back. The system suggested a new title, as if it had never existed. At 9, the project manager from the day before finally sent a room number. Small conference, second floor, his message read. No greeting this time. I went early and waited in the hallway. The carpet pattern repeated every 6 feet. A framed poster about company values hung crooked, one corner slightly lower. I straightened it with 2 fingers, then put my hands behind my back. He opened the door and stepped aside so I could enter first, the same way people had started doing in elevators. Inside, he didn't sit across from me. He sat beside the screen, angled away like he was leaving himself an exit. "I'm not supposed to say this," he said. It wasn't dramatic. It sounded like a line he'd practiced in his car. He slid a stapled packet across the table. Meeting minutes, last week's leadership sync, a page I hadn't been invited to. My name appeared twice. Both times it was attached to boundary concerns. It made it sound like I'd raised the issue myself, like I'd initiated something. I ran my finger along the sentence, slow. The paper was slightly rough, cheap stock, printed in a hurry. "That's not what I said," I told him. He nodded once. He didn't argue. He didn't agree. He just nodded, like confirmation was a risky thing to offer out loud. "HR asked for final edits," he said. "I saw your name and I figured you'd want to know. I asked who wrote them." He looked at the screensaver on the TV, a floating company logo that bounced corner to corner. "It came down from the top," he said, and that was his answer. When I left the room, I didn't take the packet with me. It felt too visible in my hands. I folded the corner of the last page instead and left it on the table, square with the edge. At my desk, my inbox held a short email from HR. Subject: Alignment check preparation. Body: Please review the attached summary for accuracy. Reply with any corrections by end of day. The attachment name was neutral. Notes: PDF. No mention of boundaries. No mention of the apology. Just notes. I opened it anyway. The first page was my apology, compressed into bullet points. The same phrases again. Professional boundaries, respectful workplace, alignment. It didn't say who I'd apologize to. It didn't say why. It didn't need to. The words did the work on their own. On the second page was a line that hadn't been in the room when I spoke. Employee acknowledged discomfort caused by personal conduct. Personal conduct. 2 words that could stretch to cover anything. I closed the file and stared at my keyboard. My hands stayed still. The office printer started up somewhere behind me, and the sound carried. Paper feeding. A pause. Another page. At lunch, I ate at my desk. I didn't go to the kitchen. I didn't want to meet anyone's eyes with a fork in my hand. A notification appeared on my calendar. Event updated. One of the meetings that had vanished was back, but my role had changed. I was listed as optional. The organizer field was blank. The location was TBD. I clicked the details. The access warning was gone. Instead, there was a line that said, "Attendance will be tracked." Tracked. Another word that didn't have to accuse to feel like pressure. Mid-afternoon, my husband walked past my desk with 2 executives. He didn't slow down. He didn't look over. He smiled at something one of them said and kept moving, like I wasn't a person who worked here. A few minutes later, he sent me a text. "Did you see HR's note? Just handle it. Keep it clean." "No. Are you okay?" "No, question mark." I didn't answer. I turned my phone face down, then turned it back over again, like that could change what it meant to leave him on red. Near the end of the day, the same project manager stopped by without stepping fully into my space. He held his laptop against his chest. "They're asking people to confirm the culture reminder was received," he said, like a checkbox. "Who?" I asked. He lifted his shoulders once. "HR," he said, and then he looked past me, down the aisle, as if naming anyone else could be overheard. After he left, the office fell into a late-day quiet, the kind that usually meant people were focused. This time it sounded like people were careful. At 5:30, HR sent one more email. Subject: Alignment check agenda attached. Body: Please arrive on time. We'll review notes and finalize language. Finalize language. I stared at that phrase until the screen dimmed. Then I moved the mouse, just enough to wake it back up. I opened my calendar again. The alignment check sat there in gray, 15 minutes long, in the same windowless room. Under Attachments, there was a new file. Acknowledgement Final. I didn't click it yet. The meeting room smelled like dry erase marker and the lemon cleaner they used on the table. Someone had already wiped it down. The surface was damp in a few streaks that didn't match the grain. I arrived 2 minutes early. HR was there first, standing by the wall-mounted screen with a remote in her hand. She had a folder tucked under her arm. Not a laptop, a folder. 2 managers came in behind me and took seats without speaking. One of them set his phone face down immediately, like it was part of the etiquette now. My husband walked in last. He didn't bring anything. No folder. No notebook. He nodded at HR, then sat at the head of the table, like that was the default setting of the room. HR clicked the remote. A slide appeared on the screen. Culture alignment. Professional boundaries. The words were centered, clean, corporate. Underneath, in smaller type, was a paragraph that looked familiar in shape, even before I read it. No one asked why we were here. No one asked if I agreed with the premise. HR spoke as if we'd all already accepted the framing. "This is a brief check-in," she said. "We're closing the loop on language so it stays consistent. It's not Rever." She opened the folder and pulled out a printed page. She placed it on the table, then slid it toward me, stopping just short of my fingertips. It was the acknowledgement again. The paper version, my signature at the bottom, a new sentence above it in a different font size, like it had been inserted after the fact. I didn't touch it right away. I read it from where it sat. HR continued, "We've had questions about tone. This is to ensure we're all aligned. No one is in trouble. Thanks for watching." In trouble landed wrong. It suggested the thing it tried to deny. One manager cleared his throat but didn't speak. The sound was small, but it filled the room because no one else made any. My husband leaned back and folded his arms. His wedding band caught the overhead light. He rotated it once with his thumb, slow, like he was smoothing something down. HR clicked to the next slide. It was the same paragraph from Slack, displayed larger, in bullet points. The phrasing was identical to what I'd signed and to what had been posted. Professional boundaries, respectful workplace, alignment. I watched one manager's eyes track the words. He read them once, then read them again. His mouth tightened at the corner, then relaxed, as if he'd decided what expression was safe. HR said, "The main point is clarity. We want to avoid misunderstandings." One of the managers, older, careful, lifted his pen and hovered it over his notebook. He didn't write. He waited. I spoke without raising my voice. The notes say personal conduct. That wasn't language I used. HR smiled like she'd expected that sentence. "Right," she said. "That's our internal phrasing. It's standard." "Standard for what?" I asked. My husband's eyes finally met mine, just long enough to hold the floor without saying anything. Then he looked back at the screen. HR answered instead. "Standard for boundary-related alignment. It's not personal, it's just the category." Very reds, category. Another word that smoothed over edges. The older manager's pen touched his notebook, then lifted again. He still didn't write. HR flipped to a slide titled Timeline. 3 dates. One was the day of my apology. One was the day the Slack post went out. One was today. The dates were in the wrong order. It was subtle. The kind of error people missed if they weren't looking for it. But the older manager saw it. I watched his eyes pause on the first date, then move down, then back up. His pen stopped moving entirely. He didn't correct her. He just sat back. Another manager shifted in his chair. The chair legs made a soft scrape on the floor. That sound was louder than the slide. HR said the Slack reminder went out following our conversation as part of a broader refresh. I didn't argue. I didn't say the girlfriend's name. I didn't say who had pressured me. I just looked at the timeline. My husband spoke for the first time since sitting down. "We're not going to litigate this," he said. Calm. Controlled, like he was protecting everyone from an inconvenience. HR nodded quickly. "Exactly," she said. "We're just finalizing language." The older manager glanced toward the door, then back to the screen. His pen went to the side of his notebook. He capped it. That's when I understood this wasn't really about what I'd done. It was about what the company wanted on record. The record would outlast any conversation. The record would be the thing people could point to later without saying anything else. HR slid another paper toward me. A single sheet. Acknowledgement. Final. There was a line near the bottom. By signing, employee confirms the accuracy of the above summary. I didn't pick up the pen. I held the paper by the corner instead, the way you hold something you don't want to crease. I read it. I let the room wait. My husband didn't move. He watched me like he was timing my compliance. HR's smile thinned. "If you have edits," she said, "we can capture them now." The older manager finally spoke, but not to me. "Do we have the original draft history of the Slack post?" he asked HR, eyes still on the screen. HR blinked once. She started. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't add a speech. He just asked again, slower. "Draft history," he said, "to make sure our timeline is accurate. No one wrote anything. No one looked at me." HR closed her folder halfway, then opened it again, like the hinge needed permission. "We can request that," she said. My husband's jaw flexed once. It was the first crack I'd seen. HR looked down at the paper in front of me. "For now," she said, "we can mark this as pending." Pending. A pause built into the system. She pulled the final sheet back toward her and placed it into the folder. Then she clicked the remote and the screen went dark. The meeting ended early. People stood up without the usual wrap-up talk. The older manager left first, carrying his notebook like it was heavier than before. My husband waited until the door shut behind them. Then he leaned toward HR, voice low enough that it wasn't meant for me. "Handle it," he said. HR didn't answer out loud. She just nodded once. When I walked back to my desk, an email was already in my inbox. Subject: Documentation review requested. Body: We are initiating an internal review of the drafting timeline. No action required at this time. No action required. The phrase sat there like a closed door that could open later. I looked at my calendar. The gray block for the alignment check was gone. In its place was a new placeholder, 1 hour long, labeled Review Drafting Timeline. No attendees listed yet. The review invite arrived without a room number. Just a time, an hour long, and the words, Drafting Timeline. In the morning, I carried my laptop to a small booth near the windows. The glass made the office feel public, even when it was quiet. I opened the Slack channel and scrolled up to the culture reminder again. The post still sat there, pinned, clean, untouched by reactions. A new message blinked at the top of my inbox. From HR. Subject: Documentation Review Process Note. Body: We will be reviewing drafting history and distribution. Please do not discuss this review outside formal channels. I read it twice. The second time, I noticed the last line, no action required. Again. At 10, the older manager from the meeting, Mark, walked past my booth and paused. He didn't step in. He kept his badge facing outward like it mattered. HR asked me for a statement, he said. I nodded. I didn't ask what he'd write. He held his phone in his hand, screen dark. They want dates, he added. Not feelings. Okay, I said. He looked at the pinned Slack post over my shoulder, then back to my face. The timeline slide was wrong, he said, finally, like he was naming a typo. That's what made me look. He left before I could answer with anything larger than a nod. The review meeting started as a call. HR joined with her camera off. 2 managers joined with cameras on. My husband joined late, then muted himself. His icon sat there like a weight. HR shared her screen. A document opened with a table of timestamps, a column labeled Draft Created, another labeled Edited By, another labeled Published. She didn't call it evidence. She called it data. I watched the cursor move down the rows. Each line had a time. Each time had a name. Some were generic, like HR admin. Some were personal. Then I saw a line that made my throat tighten, not from emotion, but from the shape of it. Edited by K. Lane. Time: 8:14 p.m. Change summary. Boundary language refined for clarity. Kara Lane, the girlfriend. She wasn't in HR. She didn't have a title that belonged on this screen. But there it was, in a log that didn't care who she was married to, who she was dating, or who she smiled at in hallways. One manager's eyes flicked to the corner of his screen, as if he was checking who else could see what he was seeing. The other manager stopped taking notes. His pen hovered, then lowered onto the desk without writing. HR's voice stayed level. "We're verifying access pathways," she said. "This could be a permissions issue." My husband unmuted. "Kara doesn't draft HR communications," he said. He didn't say it like a question. He said it like a correction the system would obey. HR didn't argue. She clicked into another tab. A permissions panel opened. It listed who had access to the culture page and who could edit pinned posts. Lane was there too. The room virtual scattered fell into the kind of silence that happens when no one wants to be first. HR cleared her throat. "We'll need to confirm how that permission was granted," she said. "That's part of the review." My husband muted again. After the call ended, I didn't close my laptop right away. I stared at the row with Kara's name until the screen went dim. Then I moved the mouse and watched it brighten again, like I was keeping something alive on purpose. Later that afternoon, an email chain appeared in my inbox that I hadn't been copied on before. It was forwarded to me by mistake or by decision. The sender was Mark. 2. HR. Subject: Drafting timeline observation. Body: Timeline slide, shown in alignment, checklisted Slack post before apology date. This is incorrect. Please confirm original draft timestamps. I observed no mention of personal conduct until HR summary document. He'd written it the way he spoke. Dates, not feelings. I could see his restraint in the plainness of the sentences. HR replied all within 7 minutes. Body: Thank you. Logged, like a box checked. Near the end of the day, my calendar refreshed on its own. Meetings that had been blank stayed blank, but one block reappeared with a new label: Process Update. 15 minutes, HR only. I didn't accept it right away. I clicked into the details and looked for attachments. There was none. Just a note: Revision pending. I closed the event window, then opened it again, as if the words might change. They didn't. I shut my laptop and held it against my chest for a second before standing. The hinge clicked, soft, final. Around me, the office kept working. Keyboards tapped, a printer hummed. Someone laughed once, then stopped. On the way out, my phone vibrated with a text from my husband. "Don't talk to anyone. Let HR do their job." I didn't answer. I slid the phone into my pocket and kept walking, feeling the message sit there like a hand on the back of my neck. On Thursday morning, a calendar block reappeared with no fanfare. Same time as always, same recurring title. The only difference was the little line under it: "You are required." I clicked the event details twice, like I didn't trust my eyes. The organizer field was still blank, but the access warning was gone. The room number was back. It felt less like an invitation and more like the system correcting a mistake without admitting it had made one. At 9, HR held the process update in a smaller room than before. This one had windows, but the blinds were half closed. The table was too long for 2 people. HR sat at one end with her folder and a pen. She didn't offer me a seat. I took one anyway, the chair closest to the door out of habit. She didn't start with an apology. She started with language. "We've identified a permissions anomaly," she said, looking down at her notes. "We're addressing it." "Anomaly," I repeated, just to hear it. She nodded once. "It's the term our audit uses," she said. I waited. I kept my hands on the table this time, fingertips resting on the wood grain. The surface had a small scratch near the edge, like someone had dragged a ring across it. HR opened the folder and slid a single page toward me. Not the acknowledgement, not the final, something else. Process determination drafting timeline internal. It was written in the same neutral tone as everything else, but 2 lines mattered. Draft edits were made by an individual without appropriate authorization. Culture reminder content will be revised to reflect appropriate authorship and intent. No names, still no names. The system didn't need them to change what would happen next. HR said, "We're updating who has access to draft culture communications going forward." I looked at the page again. "Does this stay in my file?" I asked. "It's not disciplinary," she said quickly. Too quickly. "It's process." I didn't argue with the word. I just set the page back down and watched her face while she watched her notes. "Your standing meetings should be stable again," she added, like she was offering a small comfort. As I left the room, I checked my calendar in the hallway. 2 more blocks had returned, stacked neatly in the week like nothing had ever been missing. The white gaps were closing. Back at my desk, my inbox had a short message from a manager I barely worked with. "Looping you back in," he wrote, attaching a meeting invite. No explanation. No reference to the memo. The invite came through with a new tag at the bottom. Attendance tracked. It was still there, but now it felt like a policy, not a warning aimed at me. Around noon, I noticed something else. Slack was still quiet, but not in the same way. A few days ago, people had been careful not to type at all. Now, messages appeared again, questions about deadlines, a shared file link, a reminder about lunch and learn. The pinned culture reminder stayed pinned, but the channel moved around it. People wrote as if it were a sign on a wall everyone had stopped reading. I watched the reactions on other posts. Thumbs up, check marks, a laughing face that didn't make sense. Nothing on the culture reminder. It remained untouched, like a surface no one wanted to put fingerprints on. At 2, Mark walked past my desk again. This time he stopped long enough to speak. "They asked me to confirm my email," he said, "the one about the timeline." "Did you?" I asked. He nodded. "Yes," he said, then quieter. "They're treating it like a log entry, not a fight." I understood what he meant. The review was becoming something that didn't require anyone to take a side out loud. The system was choosing the shape of the truth for them. Late afternoon, my husband passed my desk again. This time, he was alone. He slowed, just enough that I could feel him deciding whether to stop. He didn't. He kept walking, phone in hand, eyes on the screen like he was reading something important. As he went by, I caught a glimpse of his thumb hovering over the same motion scroll. Pause. Scroll like he was stuck in a loop. 5 minutes later, he texted, "HR says it's being handled. Don't make it weird." I read it once. I didn't respond. I turned my phone face down, then left it that way. At 5, an email came from HR. Subject: Culture, Page, Maintenance Window. Body: The HR Culture page will undergo maintenance Friday 9:10 a.m. Some content may be temporarily unavailable. No action required. Maintenance window: The kind of phrase that made change sound like routine. I clicked the HR Culture page link from the pinned Slack post. The page loaded. The culture reminder was still there. Same paragraph, same careful words, same clean formatting. Under the post, I noticed something new. A small line of text I hadn't seen before. Last edited, Wednesday, 8:14 p.m. The timestamp matched the log HR had shown in the review call. Kara's edit time, preserved in a place anyone could see if they looked closely enough. I didn't screenshot it. I didn't forward it. I just stared until the numbers stopped, feeling like numbers, and started feeling like a door that was already half open. When I shut down for the day, I didn't close my laptop right away. I waited until the office emptied a little, until the noise softened and the air felt less watched. Then I lowered the lid. The hinge clicked. The sound was small, but in the quiet, it carried. On my phone, the maintenance window sat on the next morning like an appointment I hadn't made but would still have to live through. Friday morning, the office felt thinner, fewer voices, fewer chairs pulled out at once. The maintenance window sat on my calendar like a placeholder for something no one wanted to name. At 9 on the dot, I opened the HR Culture page. The browser wheel spun longer than usual, then the page refreshed. The pinned culture reminder was gone. There was no banner announcing an update, no note about revisions, just the rest of the page flowing upward to fill the space where the paragraph had been. Headings shifted, white space closed. If you hadn't been looking for it, you might not have noticed anything had changed at all. I checked the Slack channel next. The pin icon was still there, but it pointed to nothing. A small system message sat where the reminder used to be. Pinned item unavailable. No explanation. No replacement. At 9:30, people started typing again. A question about a deadline. A link to a shared drive. A reminder about a meeting starting in 10 minutes. No one mentioned culture. No one mentioned boundaries. The channel moved on, and the quiet that followed wasn't careful anymore. It was ordinary. At 10, the all hands began. I sat near the back, laptop open, hands folded in front of it. The room filled the way it always did. Late arrivals, slipping into seats, someone whispering about coffee, a chair scraping too loud and then being adjusted quietly. My husband stood at the front, remote in hand. He looked the same as he always did in these meetings, calm, confident, ready to talk about numbers. The slide deck moved through updates, revenue, hiring, a new client win. There was a section titled People and Culture, but it held only 2 bullets, training dates and a reminder to complete surveys. No boundary language, no refresh, no acknowledgement of the thing that had occupied the air all week. I watched faces instead of the screen. A manager 2 rows ahead leaned back when the culture slide passed, shoulders dropping like he'd been holding them up without realizing it. Someone else closed a notebook and didn't reopen it. A few people glanced at their phones, then put them away again. The room stayed quiet, but it was a different kind of quiet, not the tight one from earlier in the week. This one felt like something had been set down. After the meeting, people stood and talked in small clusters. Normal conversations, project questions, weekend plans. I didn't hear my name. As I walked out, Mark caught my eye and gave a small nod. Nothing more. No comment, no follow-up, just acknowledgement that something had finished its course. Back at my desk, my calendar refreshed one last time. The remaining gray blocks turned solid. Recurring meetings sat where they always had. No warnings, no tracking notes attached to my name. An email from HR arrived at 11. Subject: Culture, page update complete. Body: Maintenance concluded. No further action required. No attachment, no explanation. I didn't reply. Around noon, my husband sent a text. "It's resolved," he wrote. "We can put this behind us." I read it, then locked my phone without answering. The words felt smaller now, like they belonged to a version of the situation that had already passed. In the afternoon, someone invited me to join a meeting I'd been building for months. The invite came through the usual way, my name listed as required. The organizer field filled in this time. I accepted. Before shutting down for the day, I opened the HR culture page one more time. I scrolled slowly, checking headers, links, the footer date, nothing out of place. I closed the tab and shut my laptop. The lid met the keyboard with the same soft click as always. No one looked up. On my way out, I passed the windowless room where the apology had happened. The door was open now. Inside, the table was bare. No folder, no paper. Just chairs pushed in, waiting. I kept walking. Outside, the air felt lighter than it had all week. Not celebratory, just clear. I checked my calendar for Monday. Everything was there. At home that night, I set my laptop on the table and didn't open it again. I left it closed, face down, and went to make dinner. Life continued. The balance was different. No one announced it.